It's Deborah Kobylt live, and
Not the Little Italy podcast this time, Tony, but thank you so much. It was my engineer. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. And joining me is David Goldblum. He produced and directed this terrific documentary, Big Rock Burning. It's been making all the film circuits throughout the country and beyond. And David lost his home in the fires, like thousands of people. And he immediately thought, gosh, I've got to do a call to action here because people are struggling. So you produced and directed this film. David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Let's talk about the film. What is it about? I believe that it follows the stories of 50 residents there. It's heart-wrenching, I have to say, but it's very much based in real time. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm predominantly a film producer, and I've always done very challenging issues of, gun violence and the sex industry, hard topics. But I've never really lived inside of a topic and then decided to make a film about it. And,
Mm,
on January 7th, I lost my home and I evacuated to a hotel room. And my community of Big Rock is a very tight-knit, middle class community in Malibu, not second home Malibu, celebrity Malibu. It's, really immigrants and people who have inherited their homes. And after the fires, like there weren't any evacuation orders and there wasn't any communication. And we just formed a WhatsApp group community. And within
mm,
hours, 200 people were on it from the community. And that's how we were getting information out to each other, in the media aftermath. People who stayed behind, they were talking about, whose homes made it, who didn't. People were looking for their parents. And it was kind of like a newsroom like that came together on the cloud overnight. And that's how found out that I lost my home. One of my neighbors went around recording everybody's homes to give people closure. And in the days that followed, there was kind of a general consensus of people's narrative. And it was very different from what I was hearing on the news. What I was hearing in the group was there was a stand down order, and no firefighters came to the whole mountain the whole night of the fire, and people were abandoned. And almost every home in Big Rock was burned down, and people just kept saying, we have to get our story out there. And I was living in a hotel room like the one I'm in now, and having lost everything, everything burned down. I just had a gym bag that made it. But people just kept saying, we have to get our story out there. We have to get our story out there. And I kept feeling this intuition that kept getting louder and louder to help the community. And eventually I just reached out 3 days later and I said, listen, I know this is early. I know this is raw, but if we want to make if we want to make a movie about this and get it out there, I will shepherd it.
mm,
I thought like if anybody reaches out to say like it's too early, don't do it, too intrusive, I would have said no, but within like an hour, 40 people reached out and said like, we're on board. How can we help? We're in. And that began the process. Like within 5 days, I was down on the ground. The National Guard was blocking the PCH every day. So we would sometimes have to wait for like 3 hours just to get back to the mountain. And that became the beginning of Big Rock Burning, which is a story about our resilient community that, many people had to fight the fires with garden hoses. Other people got stuck trying to flee, just kind of following the harrowing night and then trying to unpack like what actually happened.
mm. What was your story? Were you putting out your fire with a hose as well, your home? And also, of all the stories that you told, each one was compelling. Are there one or two that really, stuck with you, saying, "Oh my gosh, this is just dreadful what these people had to go through, what I had to go through." Could you share?
Yeah, my story wasn't as like heroic as the others. I'm a New Yorker, even though I've lived in LA for 16 years. I'm not like fire savvy, so I didn't have a to-go bag. I wasn't trained to put out fires with garden hoses or water buckets. So I looked out my window and I saw a 50-foot fire cloud coming towards me. And I jumped in my car and sped down the mountain, probably within like an hour of making it out. But in the making of the film, There was a story I heard that didn't actually make it into the film, but it was a
Mm.
man who he was, covered in flames and tried to get out. And I believe he went down to the PCH, and because there weren't any police or firefighters directing traffic or nobody was there helping, he crossed the street and got hit by a car. So he lost his life because, blunt force trauma and be burns because the burns. And that for me was just like a real
Oh,
embodiment of everything that went wrong that night.
just horrific. You're right. Very little was in place. And the way these residents told their story, each and every one of them was very compelling. The way you wove it together. I need to be clear. You're right about what you said about this community. It is a tight knit community. Same with the Palisades, and for that matter, Altadena. These are people who have been there. Many of them grew up there. Many of their homes are built. They were built. Many decades ago of wood, not necessarily the best material to build a home with anymore up in the, in Fireland, but that's what they lived with. And it was beautiful and people were strong. And now you've told their stories. So tell me about where this film has been, because it has been making the circuit. And what's your goal with it?
So my goal all along was to make a film that could get out the same year that the disaster happened. Because I know a
Mm,
lot of these films happen that they come out 4 years after the tragedy. And then just unfortunately, because the news cycle that we're living in, people just don't care anymore. I've already found like 9 months after the fires, nobody is checking up on me and asking how I'm. No, I'm not being a victim. I'm just saying like people move on to the next tragedy du jour. So I wanted something that could come out within the year and that people could use as a tool in their lawsuits or just to have testimony and give people a voice. So we finished like a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we finished August 29th, the morning of August 29th, we finished, and that night we had our world premiere at Malibu City Hall,
yeah.
and which is where I wanted to premiere it all along. And it was, over 300 people there, sold out. I think probably 75% of the crowd had lost their homes in some fire or another. And since then, we've been all around the country. We've screened at Mill Valley Film Festival, Santa Fe, Newport, SCAD Savannah. We screened at LMU, the college last night. I'm going to Berkeley next week. So we're making our rounds, just raising awareness everywhere we go. And I was honored to speak at the United Nations 2 weeks ago in a session with global leaders just to raise awareness about what we went through, but whenever there's a natural disaster, communication breaks down and feel abandoned and are left. So I think we need to catch up with our resources in our country to the climate that we're living in and just the reality that we're living in.
Many of the people, did they have insurance? Are they having any, for lack of a better word, luck retrieving finances from the insurance? I mean, talk to me about that, because I know that's been an ordeal for many, if not most.
Yeah, I think insurance has been a problem even before these fires, and it's kind of like, we're living in a new time, and there was just an article that came out that said something about Malibu is like a fire zone. So it's tough that like I don't want to blame insurance companies. They can't keep footing the bill, but um what I've heard is insurance has been okay. It's the people whose homes survived that I think they're having trouble.
Mm.
Because insurance isn't covering everything, and a lot of those homes either need to be rebuilt because of all the damage, or everything is ruined because of all the toxicity and ash. So it's a tough situation for everybody. And
Yeah.
insurance companies as well, because it's like, I don't think they foresaw what was coming.
You know, I've covered my fair share of fires as a reporter here in Los Angeles. I've been in Malibu covering them. I remember being in Topanga and just literally the fire, the flames just went right over my head, and from one tree to another. And this has been an ongoing situation for the people who live and build there. I believe, I'm not a scientist, so I can't, don't quote me, that it's escalating. Am I right? I mean, what are we to do about this when you've got a large community of people living in a beautiful area that is just a dangerous place to be living?
Yeah, I mean, during filming, one of the subjects said this is the price for paradise. So I think
Yeah.
it's a choice. So if someone's going to decide to live in an area that is prone to fires, they have to be okay with the repercussions of what could potentially happen. So that's
Yeah,
one thing. I think if you're going to live in a fire area, the homes need to match the area that you're living in.
right,
So I was
right.
just in Santa Fe, and it was really, I really stuck out to me that, those people, even before the country was formed, they created homes and settlements that were fire prone. So we need different material and different housing and different structures if you're going to live in the mountains where fires happen,
Yeah. Do
or
you go ahead,
move,
please?
or just, which is what I'm kind of grappling with. Is like, do I want my children to have PTSD because they're getting evacuated from their classroom? You kind of have to know everything that's on the table when you're making these decisions.
Interesting point that we're going to bring that up in a minute. I want to talk about the kids, PTSD, schools. I mean, all the repercussions. But let's stick with building at the moment. Building materials. I notice, I still go hiking every day in the Palisades. I miss that place. I used to also do Malibu, but it's so difficult for me to get through now. I don't do it as often, to be quite frank. But I notice the homes that survived, they're pretty much built of stucco, right? I mean, the way they built these homes, they now clearly I don't think they're living inside of them because of all the other damages on the inside, the smoke. But what about rebuilding with materials that can sustain fire and also personal responsibility for brush clearance? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we did this panel at LMU yesterday, and that came up from one of the residents. She was saying, my neighbor cared so much, and this isn't to blame, this is just the reality. We care so much about our palm tree, which
Yeah,
is so easily to catch fire. But if you care more about your palm tree than your neighbor's house, that's not a way to live in communion with other people. So I think
yeah,
we all have to take care of the land and not just be like, well, I'm gonna pay the fine, 150 bucks a month because I want more privacy and have more brush. I mean, Jeff Bezos does it too. Like in Beverly Hills, he pays the fine, $10,000 a month, so he could have more trees. And what's a better solution? Is it, having laws that make sure that we're protecting the land that we're living on, or paying the fines?
yeah. I mean, in his case, it's for privacy, right? So
Privacy.
at least it's not for safety; it's for
Yeah.
privacy. But with Malibu and the other areas that are burn zones, it's life or death essentially. So yeah, maybe neighbors really ought to rethink that pretty palm tree and just say, "Look, I'd rather have a house. I'll figure out another tree that can stand next to me that looks pretty enough that isn't going to blow up." Do you know what I mean? Like, there's got
Yeah.
to be that give and take. Go
The
ahead.
resident who spoke last night, she's 80 years old. She saved her cul-de-sac and fighting with a garden hose. I mean, heroic. But she was saying, like, if you want a palm tree, get a little palm tree, like, in a little bucket and then move it. But these huge, we also have plants that don't represent the real
Yeah.
climate or land that we're living on.
Look, people don't realize that, right? That beautiful shot of Los Angeles and Hollywood with the palm trees, they're not indigenous people to
Yeah,
here. That's just not our tree. But
exactly.
same with eucalyptus. I've got a bunch of them behind my home. They're not mine, they're the neighbors. Well, guess what? Three of them fell onto my home a few years ago with those massive rains. Lovely. And they're from Australia. It's like we also have to plant in, the plants that belong here. So
Yeah.
that's a really, really big one too. How is rebuilding going? Because you've got all those canyon roads, tough to get in, tough to get out, tough to clear. And then let's add on top of that along the PCH, where they're on septic tanks. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do there. Can you tell us what you know?
It's from every area. I think every town and neighborhood is dealing with a different set of like issues from Altadena, what I know, and
Yeah,
then the Palisades. It seems like the Palisades, they're moving along the quickest. I mean, you probably know better than I do, but it seems
yeah,
like they're having the most progress. And then Malibu, just the city of Malibu has so much red tape. Somebody said last night it's probably the hardest area to build or to rebuild. So from what I know, I think there's been four permits and maybe
oof,
now it's like 10 in the last 10 months. So that's really tough for everybody because in the meantime, you have investors coming in who can play the long game, who can buy people's land for 10x. And, it changes the shape of a city when you have people coming from outside who are willing to pay extra to rebuild. So I think that's going to come in the near future too.
Yeah, you're talking more along the PCH, right?
Yeah, you have, these foreign investors who are coming in who are buying 10 lots at a time. This Malibu is going to look a lot different in 5 years.
Yeah, if they can even get permits to do it, because even with all their money, they still have to comply with the
Yeah.
permits. So you said it's been really slow. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of just the whole process of saying, "Hey, look, you live, you're hanging off a mountain. I don't know if I can really approve this. Let me look into it further." Meaning, the city. Or they're just slow, not enough people. Like, talk to me about that.
I think everybody's scared of a loss.
Oh,
Like, I think that's a big core of it is nobody wants to get sued. So nobody wants to rush to, give a
wow.
permit where the people in Malibu want to rush to rebuild so that they can get their identity back. So it's creating this like unfortunate conundrum for everybody.
Yeah. Um, how about your neighbors? They're like dispersed everywhere, right? Clearly, they're not living in Big Rock anymore, or are they? Do you have one or two that went back, or no, they can't?
Well, the beautiful thing is like the community is still so tight knit. We're all on this WhatsApp group still
Yeah,
talking all day long about various issues and, rebuilding or loss. Like everybody's just so keeping in the loop. But yeah, I moved back to the East Coast. So I'm temporarily in New York just because after filming, I mean, I was going back to set every day.
yeah,
It was just very traumatic. So I was just like
yeah,
a new environment. So I'm figuring out if I should come back to LA or not. And, everybody's dispersed. Some
yeah.
people moved out, some people moved out of California. A couple people are still living in the mountain, but everybody's all over the place now.
What would you like to say to the city leaders there? What would you like them to know?
It's people are always like, what's the call to action? Is it trying to get Gavin Newsom to do something? I just feel like if somebody in leadership just came to a podium and said, I screwed up,
Yeah.
that would just make everybody, it would just bring a lot of closure, I think, for everybody. But because still nobody's taking accountability, everybody's blaming everybody, everybody's firing everybody. There's, whistleblowers coming out. From what I know from the inside, there's more whistleblowing coming out in the future from people who saw things on the inside. Nobody's just willing to step up and say, I didn't do my job, or we weren't prepared, or that's the sad thing for me.
Mm,
I don't know if anything is going to get changed on a legislative level, but it would be really nice if some leader just took accountability for everything that went wrong.
mm. Um, well, that's the local, right? I guess you'd say the same thing to the state and also the county, right? I suppose you have the same questions for all of them, right?
I met with some state officials up north, and from my perspective, a very clear disconnect from the reality that people in the Palisades and Malibu and Altadena were living in with what people are saying up there. So
Yeah,
it's like two different worlds that they're seeing. I invited them to come down to Malibu. I don't think they will, but I said, you should come talk to people on the ground to see how it
yeah.
really was.
Where are people meeting? Now, I know there's a WhatsApp group because we have one here where we live too. And believe me, by the skin of our teeth, we made it out of there because we're right on the border of Palisades. But are there restaurants where people are gathering at? Because the community, that's so important. And once that sort of isn't there anymore, people just feel lost, right?
Yeah, I mean, last night was really nice. Almost every subject from our film came to the screening.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
that was beautiful. And yeah, there have been a couple like get-togethers, and Dukes in Malibu just hosted something for the community that a lot of people showed up at. So I do agree. It's really important to have community wherever, especially in this time of limbo.
Yeah, and you wonder as it goes on, as time just goes on, we're approaching the 1 year, and then let's see what happens, next year in 2026. Will there be movement to rebuild? And then you start to get into another year, and people are just going to start scratching their heads and say, I got to move on.
Yeah,
somehow.
if you do the math, I mean, if let's say 10 permits have been given in the last 10 months and what over 700 homes in Malibu burned, that's not good. Like that's going to take a long time. And, I think people start to rethink their decisions as time goes on. And like I said, with the children, that's a big question for me is like, where's the best place to raise a child?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's very, very difficult. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the kids with PTSD because they've got it. Going back to school, going to bed at night. Is their house going to burn down while they're sleeping? Talk to me about that because I know that you've, again, been right there in the center of the community. And what are you hearing?
A subject in the film was speaking about his daughter, and he said, every kid in Malibu has PTSD.
Mm,
And, if you go back to the fires in 2018, those kids are now in high school, and now there's a new generation of kids who lost their homes. They didn't just lose their homes, they were out of school. They lost, it just everything gets um, messed up when a fire like this happens. And it wasn't just the Palisades fire. I mean, the Franklin fire happened in December where
that's
we
right.
we evacuated and kids got traumatized, and to have it happen again a couple weeks later is really hard for kids. I think they lost like 20 days of school.
Wow. So what's being done about that? I mean, are there community groups where kids are going to talk? Because you're right. If they continue to talk about it, it's going to become sort of a permanent fear in their minds as they grow older about not just being concerned about fire in their homes, but other things, right?
Yeah, it's not just about the home or the things, it's about the reality and like the security. Like when everything is just one day you're living one way and then the next everything is up in the air. I think especially for a kid, that's really ungrounding and scary, and that will last for a lifetime, unfortunately, unless they do a lot of grief work and processing, but that's what's really sad.
Yeah. Is there a call to action such as here's what we need to do, here's what we must need to do to protect ourselves, to protect our homes, because clearly you don't have a fire station at every block. They can only do what they can do. Is that the answer? What is the answer? Because people do want to stay there, some of them, many of them, but this can't keep happening at this rate, right? So
That's a
what do you think?
great question. I mean, people watch the film and they want to know like what to do and what's the call to action. I think for me and for the subjects and what the core message of the film is that you can't assume that help is going to come. Like
Yeah.
we live in this world where we think if we call 911, they're going to come. And somebody in the film, she got stuck on a boulder, this huge
Oh,
boulder off the mountain because she thought she was going down a different road because fire and smoke was everywhere. And she called 911 and they said, sorry, we're not coming. So
yeah.
it's a big wake-up call that when you think these places, these institutions will come when you need them the most, you can't assume that anymore. So you have to be more resilient in your own home, whether that's having a to-go bag, learning, you know, CPR or basic fire training or flood training or earthquake, training, just being more resilient in your own home, I think is a
Yeah.
call to action.
Or also, something with water on your own property. I don't know what that means or even looks like, but a community fire station. I don't know what that looks like either. I don't know the cost. I'm just tossing out ideas. I don't even know if any of it's feasible. But something where you can protect yourself and not just sit there on a boulder and call somebody and say help. Which, by the way, that scene scared the living shit out of me because she could have easily gone off that boulder with her car. It would have rolled over and she would have been gone. So that was
Yeah.
sort of a scary moment when I saw that in the film. I thought, whoa, lucky woman that she got out of there alive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Malibu has the community brigade, which is like volunteer, fire help. But I think we screened this film in Savannah, Georgia, and two college students came up to me and they said, because of your film, we're going to do emergency training.
I
So
love it.
that for me was like, that's exactly what I want this film to accomplish.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the celebrity help, even though this is not a celebrity film at all. They're not even in the film because really, people, when you see this film, you'll see they are longtime residents, loving community members. But you've had Brian Fogel, Ricki Lake, who lost her home, Mark Hamill. Let's talk about some of the eyeballs that you've attracted on this film.
Yeah, I mean, for me, having done these challenging topics, I always try to bring on like an executive producer that can help amplify a subject. And for me, it's always about figuring out like who makes the most sense.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go to Barack Obama to executive produce the Fire film. Like they
yeah,
have to
yeah,
be, it needs to fit the narrative. So Ricki Lake lost her home in Malibu, and she has a really harrowing story of, really staying to the end, fighting the flames with her husband,
yeah,
her dog. And she didn't live in my community, but she lived nearby. And one of our producers sent her the film, and she said, this is my story, even though this wasn't my community, and I'll do whatever I can to help. So she's not getting paid. She's not like, she's just doing it out of just desire to spread the message. And, she came on, she's been on a couple film festival tours with us, and she's been incredible. Brian Fogel is a Malibu guy. He directed Icarus, which is one of my favorite films, won the Oscar for it. And with Brian, I never knew him, but I think in February or in March, I got an email from the Malibu Times that said Brian was like gave some speech at City Hall about a different issue. But when I read that, I was like, oh, Brian really cares about Malibu. If he went to City Hall and waited 3 hours to speak, like, oh, he must really care. So I cold emailed him. And I said, hey, can you just watch this film and would you consider coming on as an executive producer? And he did and gave notes and was great. And then Mark's just been the best. I didn't know him either. And I cold emailed his wife. And, Mark and his wife and his family have a real affinity for Malibu.
yeah.
And they watched the film and they said that we'll do whatever we can to help. So what's been really amazing about the film is everybody just wants to support it and nobody's asking for anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was about to say, what's next? I guess what's next is a big waiting game, isn't it? Or is there something people can do? I guess people are sitting by waiting for an insurance check. I mean, what is next?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I need to take a long nap and then I've been thinking about a follow-up film. There's so much that's come out and that I've heard and whistleblowers and
Ooh,
just other stories. And obviously, there's a lot that's come out in the news around the arson. So I've been thinking of like, okay, I've lived in this world for a year. I'm not quite ready to leave it, and there's more to unpack. So I'm looking into that and talking to all the right people.
yeah,
So that's kind of what's next for me. And yeah, I think everybody's in limbo. I mean, there's lawsuits and insurance, and we're also in fire season. So I think everybody's holding their breath a little.
yeah. I mean, that's why we do what we do, right? There's a story to tell, there's a way to help people. So I really just have to say thank you for what you did, for just stepping in, grabbing a camera, and doing terrific interviews and getting this out there for people to see what people are going through and how they can move forward somehow. So I can see a part two to this, absolutely. So I think after you take that nap, I can see what you'll be doing next year. I really do. Anything else you want to add to our interview that you'd like to call out? Anything?
No, I think you covered everything. That was great. I just thank you for giving this a platform and we're just trying to spread it as far as we can. We didn't Netflix or we didn't have a beast behind us. So it's
Right.
even though we have these big celebrity names, it's been very grassroots getting it out there.
Yeah. And you've done a marvelous job. I thank you so much for all that you've done. Big Rock Burning. How can people see it?
So we right now it's on Vimeo on demand. So you can either go to the Big Rock Burning Instagram page or my page, David Goldblum, or just go to Vimeo on demand and search for Big Rock Burning. And we're also figuring out other ways to make it more broadly accessible. So we're
Yeah.
gonna do that in the next before the anniversary.
And for any whistleblowers out there or people who have a story, can they reach out to your Instagram page? I know that I
Yeah.
reach out to, I think you found me that way, right?
Yeah.
You just wrote me on Instagram. I will answer almost immediately. Because something like this, I was thrilled. So do
Yeah.
you answer when people, is that a good way for people to reach you?
Yeah, just DM me. I mean, I think that's one of the beauties of social media is you can
Yeah.
really connect with people all around the country or the world. So, yeah, if you have a story to tell, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. David Goldblum, Big Rock Burning. Look for it on Vimeo. Vimeo, is that how you say it? I
Yeah,
never say it
Vimeo
quite.
on demand.
Vimeo on demand. So please look for it there. And perhaps there's a part two coming. I think it's needed. I could really see so many questions unanswered. And I think that'll be a lot of, great help to so many people. So people look for that movie. Reach out to David on Insta if you can. DM him. It's a great way to get in touch. And get in touch with me too, because this is a story that's enormously dear to my heart. It's changed many lives. I was not impacted in terms of my home, but it's really changed the way I live. So, and many of my friends displaced. It's just, sometimes I wake up and I go, what do I do today? And I have a home, so I'm lucky, right? So we're the lucky ones. But it's been pretty traumatic for a lot of people, particularly young people. So thank you again, and you can find our interview, Deborah Kobylt Live, on YouTube, on Facebook. We'll post promos about it throughout, this month, next month, and certainly for the anniversary on January 7th. And it's also an audio podcast on Spotify, iHeart, anywhere that you get your podcast. Just put in our name, Deborah Kobylt Live, and David Goldblum, and he'll pop up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.